Hi, my name is Rabbi Dunner. Welcome to my weekly Erev Shabbat Dvar Torah, this week for Parshat Tissa. Today, I want to study a comment with you that one of the sages of the Midrash makes on a passage in the Torah. The reason I want to study it with you is because I think that it contains an important lesson, not so much about the passage it's addressing as it is about ourselves. So listen carefully. It's a Midrash at the very end of the Torah. The Torah concludes, as you know, with the death of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, and the obituary of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Torah says three things about Moses. First of all, it says that there was never anyone like Moses because God singled him out and spoke to him face to face. Secondly, it says that there's never been anyone like Moses just because of all the miracles and wonders that he did on God's behalf in the land of Egypt. And thirdly, it says that there's never been anyone like Moses because of the might and the power that he demonstrated before all the people of Israel. Now, all of these things, these three things, are very interesting, but it's the third one that interests me most. What does the Torah mean when it talks about the might and the awesome power that Moses demonstrated le'enei kol Yisrael, in the sight of all of the people of Israel? You might think that the Torah is talking about the fact that he led the people across the Red Sea, or you might think that the Torah is talking about the fact that he brought the people to Mount Sinai, or maybe the Torah is talking about how Moses supplied the nation with man during all the years in the wilderness. There are so many things that you could think of as a great demonstration of might and awesome power that Moses performed in the sight of all of Israel. But I bet you that you would never think of the one that this sage in the Midrash comes up with. According to him, what was the greatest act of power that Moshe Rabbeinu performed? Do you know what he said? Do you know what it was? It was the breaking of the Luchot when he came down from the mountain and saw the nation dancing around the golden calf, the story that we find in this week's Parshat Tissa. Amazing, no? I mean, think about it. Why was that the greatest and most powerful thing that Moshe Rabbeinu ever did in his whole life? Was it really greater or more powerful than standing up to Pharaoh and saying to him, "Let my people go"? Was it really greater or more powerful than standing up to Korach when he rebelled? Was it really greater or more powerful than standing up to the people when they panicked at the report of the spies and said that they wanted to turn around and go back to Egypt? What was so special? What was so powerful? What was so wonderful about Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the Luchot? Why was that the bravest and the most remarkable act that Moshe Rabbeinu ever did in his whole life? The Rabbi Mordechai commentary explains it so beautifully. Moses was up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And those 40 days and 40 nights were probably the most spiritually rewarding time of his entire life. In fact, of any human being's life in all of human history. Every letter of the Luchot that he brought down the mountain with him was carved during that time with holiness and purity, with love and devotion. And then, when Moses came down from the mountain and saw the people dancing around the golden calf, he realized it was all a terrible mistake. He realized that the nation was nowhere near ready to receive the Luchot. Maybe, and think about this, maybe he realized that if they were not given the Luchot, they might be able to claim that they didn't know what was written on them, and maybe that would be some kind of defense for what they'd done. Whatever it was, Moses understood that he had absolutely no choice. He had to destroy the Luchot. But can you imagine how hard it must have been for him? Coming down the mountain with those Luchot was the crowning experience of his life. And now to take this unbelievable achievement, this gift from Hashem, and break it, shatter it. Could you or I do that? It was one thing to challenge Pharaoh. Pharaoh wasn't his achievement. He was an adversary. Who cares about Pharaoh? And battling Korach or the spies or to do any of the miracles and wonders, What's the big deal by comparison? They were not his thing. He didn't own those situations, but the Luchot, Moshe owned them. They were his. And then he took these two tablets and broke them. Unbelievable. Who could ever do that? The answer is that Moshe could do that. Moses had the integrity to break the Luchot because it was the right thing to do. And that's why the Torah says that there has never been anyone like Moses, because of the might and the power that he demonstrated before all the people of Israel. And now, let us take this insight of the Rabbi Mordechai and apply it to our own lives. Have you ever invested an enormous amount of your time and energy in a project and then realized that it was a mistake and that you needed to start all over again? Have you ever invested all your money or all your energy into a business and then realized the business was not going to succeed and you have to start all over again? Have you ever invested all your hopes and dreams in a relationship and then realized that the relationship was going to fail? If you have, you can understand what Moses must have felt at that moment when he had to decide whether or not to smash the Luchot and start all over again. There is a temptation that we all have at a time like that. It is an enormous temptation to hunker down and stick with your original idea. It's incredibly hard for any of us to admit that we've made a mistake. Criticizing someone else's work is really easy. Criticizing your own work, now that takes willpower and self-control. My teacher from Nei Yisrael Yeshiva in Baltimore, Rabbi Frand, quotes this Midrash and explanation of the Rabbi Mordechai, and he adds a beautiful last piece that I'd like to share with you. Why do we break a glass at the end of a Jewish wedding at the chuppah? Do you know why? The usual explanation for this custom is that you break a glass in memory of the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim that has been destroyed. It is a way of fulfilling the promise of Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yemini. If I forget you, Jerusalem, if I do not place you above my greatest joy, I have forgotten my right hand. The moment of your wedding is the moment of your greatest joy. And so you break a glass in order to remember Jerusalem at that exact moment. That's the answer you've always heard, right? But Rabbi Frand has another explanation. It's truly amazing. There is one rabbinic source that connects the breaking of the glass at a wedding to the breaking of the Luchot by Moses. Really? Are you kidding me? Why on earth should we remember the breaking of the Luchot at a wedding at the time of our greatest joy? Do you know what Rabbi Frand says? It is to remind the bride and the groom that if their marriage is to be successful, they must emulate Moshe Rabbeinu, and they must be willing to admit when they're wrong, rather than stand on their pride. They must be willing to follow the example of Moses and give up their preconceived notions when they turn out to be wrong, just as Moshe Rabbeinu did. It's not easy. I have a friend who says, I once thought that I had made a mistake, but then I realized I was wrong. And we're all like my friend. It is hard, very hard, for any of us to admit when we're wrong. But if Moses was able to break the most valuable thing of his entire life, if Moses was willing to start all over again after all the effort he had put into the Luchot on Har Sinai, then perhaps, just perhaps, we can do the same thing as well. That is the secret of a good marriage, and that's why we break the glass under a chuppah. And it's also the secret to a happy life, to make sure you're always ready to break the Luchot if you need to, and start again with a smile on your face and confidence in your step. And of course, Hashem will take care of the rest. Thank you so much. Wishing you Shabbat Shalom and a wonderful week ahead. Good Shabbos, good Shabbos.